I now give the floor to Ms. Bintou Keita.
Mr. President, distinguished members of the Council, unfortunately the speaker's microphone is not working properly. Thank you for this opportunity to present the report of the Secretary General on the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I would also welcome the presence of His Excellency the Permanent Representative of the DRC in New York, Mr. Zeno Mukongo, and His Excellency the Permanent Representative of the Republic of Rwanda, Ernest Musio. Since my last briefing on the 27th of March of this year, the political dynamic has mostly revolved around the establishment of a new government, which was inaugurated during the night from the 11th to the 12th of June of 2023, following the elections of December 2023. I very warmly welcome the appointment of the first female prime minister in the history of the country, Madame Judith Suminwa Tuluka. The new government, in addition to the prime minister, has 17 women out of 54 ministers, which is a net increase of 27 to 33% of the representation of women, and points to the commitment of the head of state to promoting gender equality in DRC and in his efforts as the champion of positive masculinity of the African Union. Since the new government took office and the Bureau of the National Assembly, I had the opportunity of speaking with the Prime Minister, several ministers, and the Speaker of the National Assembly. During these discussions, we were able to discuss the new plan of action of the government and the possibility of support by UNESCO of its implementation in conformity with its mandate.
Of the Council. Just a few days before the election of the Permanent Bureau of the National Assembly on 19 May, armed elements attacked the residence of Vital Kamerhe, leading to the death of 2 policemen in charge of his security. The attackers subsequently breached the premises of the Palais de la Nation. Order was quickly restored, with the Congolese security forces arresting over 50 individuals subsequently charged with participating in the attacks. I condemn in the strongest terms this attempt to destabilize national institutions. The security situation in eastern DRC has continued to deteriorate, reaching alarming levels of violence and civilian displacement. I am extremely concerned about the rapid expansion of the movement du 23 Mars M23 in North Kivu and the spillover in South Kivu, despite numerous operations conducted by the FRDC, regularly supported by Monusco and SAMI-DRC. Over the course of the last 2 weeks, the M23 captured several strategic locations in North Kivu, including the town of Kanyabayonga, straddling the Lubero and Rutshuru territories. During their latest military offensive, the M23 and its backers burned several FRDC bases and triggered additional population displacement, further exacerbating an already catastrophic humanitarian and human rights situation. As documented by the group of experts, which reports to the Sanction Committee established by this Council, the government of Rwanda has reinforced its support to the M23, enabling it to make major territorial gains across eastern DRC. The rapidly escalating M23 crisis carries the risk, the very real risk of provoking a wider regional conflict. In addition to the escalating M23 crisis, a spate of horrific attacks carried out by the ADF, Zaire and Codeco armed groups in Ituri province has caused almost 300 additional victims during the reporting period. Further south, the ADF have also entered Lubero territory in North Kivu on several occasions, killing an unprecedented number of civilians. Between 4 and 7 June alone, more than 90 people were killed in isolated corners of the territory. In South Kivu, The M23 crisis also reached Kalehe territory, with indirect fire hitting Minova and other nearby towns, killing and injuring several civilians and generating further displacement. In the southern part of the province, rumors of M23 infiltration of the Haut Plateau of Uvira, Fizi, and Mwenga have further exacerbated community tensions, which require the urgent attention of government authorities.
Mr. President, distinguished members of the Council, in this complex situation, Monusco has continued to provide support to the military operations of the FARDC. Joint operations have contributed to the protection of civilians, especially as far as operations against Codeco and the Mai groups in Ituri. Monusco also completed the training of 500 new FARDC recruits in the framework of the new joint FARDC Monusco operation called Northern Scalpel. The Springbok operation in defense of Goma and Sake has continued to confront operations of the M23 and is continuing. SAMI DRC has continued its deployment and should reach its full operational capacity by the middle of July. And on this opportunity, I would like to express my deepest condolences to South Africa, which lost 2 soldiers on the 25th of June during a mortar attack of the M23 against its base in Sake. I also hope for a prompt recovery to the wounded.
We are witnessing in the DRC one of the most severe, complex, and neglected humanitarian crises of our times. The escalating violence in the East continues to trigger massive population displacement, exacerbating an already dreadful humanitarian situation. Overall, the DRC today counts 7.3 million displaced people, including 6.9 million in the eastern provinces alone. International humanitarian law violations are impeding humanitarian aid delivery. The growing proximity of the front lines and the presence of weapons, including heavy artillery, within and around displacement camps and spontaneous sites significantly compromise the security of the displaced and resident population. At least 15 bombardments have hit IDP sites or their immediate surroundings, killing almost 30 people and injuring many more. What is sadly more is that gender-based violence does not stop to increase. For the whole year of 23, 122,960 cases of gender-based violence were reported, marking a 3% increase from 22. Female victims, including girls, accounted for almost 90% of all cases, with incidents of sexual violence against children increasing by 40%. This is solely the tip of the iceberg, as many cases remain unreported. Based on current trends, 24 risk becoming another, sadly, record year. The 2024 Humanitarian Response Plan, launched on 20th February 2024, seeks for $2.6 billion to provide humanitarian assistance to 8.7 million crisis-affected people. As of mid-June, the plan remained only funded at 26%. I thank Member States for their support and encourage them to provide additional support. In addition, I also call upon Member States and regional organizations to increase their efforts to reduce humanitarian suffering by strengthening their engagement towards political and regional solutions and by recommitting to tackle the root causes of conflict driving the dramatic upsurge of humanitarian needs. I welcome the 2 weeks humanitarian truce in Eastern DRC, which began at midnight on July 5th, I urge the parties to use this as an opportunity to inject fresh momentum into ongoing regional peace efforts.
Mr. President, distinguished members of the Council, as requested in Resolution 2717 of 2023, the Secretary General submitted to you a letter identifying the different possible options to support the SAMI DRC, the mandate of which was endorsed by the Peace and Security Council of the African Union in March. I won't revisit the various options that were presented to you, but I would like to recall, as mentioned in the letter, that there won't be a military solution to this conflict and that peace will not be able to be reestablished unless there is a lasting political solution. I'd like to express my gratitude and wholehearted support for mediation efforts led by President of Angola, João Lourenço, between the DRC and Rwanda in the framework of the Luanda process. They need the full support of the international community, and here I would like to applaud the upcoming ministerial meeting of the Peace and Security Council of the African Union at the initiative of Angola to discuss the situation in the East. These regional efforts must be conducted in conjunction with the mediation efforts at the provincial and local level, aimed at facilitating the disarmament of armed groups in the spirit of the Nairobi process. As part of the implementation of its mandate, Monusco has continued to support the disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration efforts of the government, in particular in Ituri and in certain provinces of North Kivu, as well as the efforts linked to the reform of the security sector. In Lubero, in North Kivu, a reintegration project benefited over 1,800 former combatants. As part of the reform of the security sector, Monusco supported the establishment of a national unit in charge of coordinating the reform of the security sector under the auspices of the Special Advisor of the President. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Council, on the 25th of June, Prime Minister Judith Suminwa Tuluka and myself chaired the closing ceremony of the operations of Monusco in South Kivu, putting an end to 20 years of operations in the province. As you were able to read in the joint report submitted to your council, the disengagement in South Kivu took place within the established time frame thanks to close cooperation between the Congolese authorities and the mission by courageously tackling the security and logistical challenges jointly identified. I thank the Congolese authorities for their flexibility and pragmatism throughout this process. The joint evaluation report on the disengagement has made it possible for us to draw important lessons from this process, which will be very useful to the joint planning of its next phases. In parallel, the process of transition is continuing. A roadmap, that is a provincial transition plan for the province of South Kivu, together with a support plan of the UN country team, have been finalized. These plans identify priorities, available resources, and future needs. I encourage member states to fully support this transition, including financially, so that it goes smoothly. I would also like to underscore the important role played by the Peace Building Fund in the framework of this transition. In the context of the disengagement and transition, the acceleration of PDDRCS will require decisive determination on the part of the authorities to convince the armed groups of the need for disarmament, starting with the provinces of Tanganyika, South Kivu, Maniema, and Ituri, and until the end of the conflict in North Kivu, as well as a long-term commitment by the international partners of the DRC. The UN system, for its part, will continue to work closely with the authorities to ensure a technical and operational support for the PDDRCS. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Council, to conclude, I would like to share with you an extract of a poem written by the young people of Uhuru Knowledge Center, and which expresses very sadly the perils of being young in North Kivu and bears witness to the urgency of both national and international support. To live in inhumane conditions, walking endless kilometers, on a quest for peace, but at each halt it's war that reigns supreme. An infernal cycle of fleeing and bombs falling on the IDPs of Mugunga after this constant fleeing. Trauma and fear have become our daily companions. Villages burned, houses set on fire, the hearts of entire families shattered in Kishishe, in Bomba, in Kichanga, in Rubaya, in Kurochi, and Mugunga. Anger is boiling over. The more time passes, the more the impasse and the rhythm of violence settles in, while we would actually prefer to dance to the beat of justice, peace, and reconciliation. Those millions of children must return to their villages as they thirst to return to their classrooms. Synopes of the future, may these children be saved. We have a duty to listen to this Congolese youth and to support it wholeheartedly for the future of the country. Thank you for your kind attention.
I thank Ms. Keita for her briefing. I now give the floor to those council members who wish to make statements.